Okay, welcome back, guys. Now, this video is going to be dedicated to the memory of Kingvon and Hakeem HK. So, basically, both their deaths um, are connected. Um, Hakeem was murdered in 2017, um, several months before Kingvon was released from prison. Now, the connection would or the chain of events. Basically, basically this is going to be a draft of some of the things that connect them. We're going to begin first with a brief history of the two characters involved and the formation of the Get Back Gang movement. So, if we go back to 2014, around this time, Kingvon would have been in and out of prison. He was an empowered individual that the government were tracking. He'd spent majority of um, his teenage years up to the moment he died in prison, going through boot camps and everything like that. Um, so he was being tracked. When he was released, or first we're going to speak about his case. So he picks up a case in 2014, and he's on the he gets picked up in 2014 with his co-defendant, and during trial, eventually during trial, his co-defendant retracts his statement. Now, I think maybe we might even be safe to say that if we also include his co-defendant in this theory that we're putting forward, that we're proposing, is that the co-defendant was told to retract the statement in order to have Kingvon to be released. In return, the co-defendant was given supposedly 28 years for retracting the statement that Kingvon um, was his co-defendant, or was the shooter in that situation for that particular incident, that crime. He retracted the statement. How we're looking at this from this perspective is that the government is pulling all the strings for every time he's in the prison and to his release date until his death. The government are tracking and pulling the strings, manipulating the incidents around him, the people around him. They're putting him in places. So what happened was is that he was released due to withholding the information or retracting the statement. So that was the reason for him to be released. So he gets released in 2017, and he comes home. Hakeem has just been murdered. No, and there isn't a lot of there's rumors circulating around about about all the things. But how we're going to connect this with the government is that n- now Kingvon is put into a position that he's put into a position where now he has he's put into position to enter the industry, to be a part, to become a member of part of the industry, and he has a mentor in the industry who's going to show him the ropes and everything, teach him the ways of the industry. And mind you, all of this happens in a number of 2 years. So things were laid in place for him. Um, okay, I just realized I'm just recording this on this network. So we're going to look at do, let me just look at some pictures first of all. Okay. He was released from prison in 2017, and then he joined the industry. And um, okay, okay. This now the okay. I'm just going to lay out how the government have their hands involved in this, and how it would only be possible with them. Is that some of the things that was happening during the get back um, formation, the 20 the war in Chicago in 2017 between these two neighborhoods, is that the government probably had these individuals on a list of empowered individuals that they were to have under their manipulation or to get rid of completely, because one of the first red flag that showed that there was some sort of involvement was the slaying of FBG Brick, and the people behind it were supposedly um, Hakeem, and the other members were, you know, Hakeem was supposedly the person behind it, and but the main thing is that all these individuals are being tracked by the government at all times, and what the government are doing in this case will be they will have um, agents in place to supply information to both sides, 63rd and 64th. They will both be given information about the other side, what they're doing. There will be this manipulation going on, and it was very clear with with the slaying of Brick and Colby, is that the government had put in place agents who gave them the logistics and also allowed them to get away. And the government also have a way of, if they help somebody with something, they have a way of wanting to tie up that loose end eventually. So the person who was a mole within O Block faction would have been Trey 5. He was the mole. He was the, what you call, like somebody who's under the payroll. He's underneath the payroll. He's a double agent. He's working for the. He's he's a double agent. He supplies information both sides to the law and to the gang. So the information about Brick's whereabouts would have been given to Trey 5 and another agent, possibly a female, who would have been in contact with FBG Brick. And this is how this thing was set up. So HK was given the the task or the job, or was given the headlines, or was given the he was the one that was deemed the responsible because it was so many people that were involved. But once it was all said and done, it was given also the storyline that HK had got revenge for his brothers slain earlier that year. So bear this in mind, guys. Bear this in mind that there'll be agents on both sides. There'll be intermediary person. So now what happens is when with Hakeem, I'm gonna call him Hakeem from now on, with Hakeem um being given being being ushered into coerced into this movement, because remember the reason why he came out of nowhere. He was drafted almost from obscurity, because prior to 2017 he had been just a local kid rather than a one of the one of the known government. He would have been just like a local kid, but there is no just a local kid with the government. With the government, they have a file, they have your profile, and he was also wanted, but how they got him involved was through, you know, his brother getting, his brother, the incident with his brother in 2017, that involved him to step into the fold, which is where they actually wanted him. Because prior to that, he'd been just living. He was protected. He was kept away from that sort of lifestyle. Then all of a sudden, 2017 happens, and he's been pushed right to the front. He was the focal point in 2017, and he was coerced. Let me just pull up his picture. HKO, bro. Okay. Okay. We're gonna look at that a little bit afterwards because just wanna keep to this focus on trying to get these points out for the story. Is that okay? Remember we said that Trey Five was the government's inside man. He was the government's inside man on in the old block section. He's the guy that formulated the plans or was given, he had the connections with the government in in this situation. So after everything happens, Trey Five supposedly goes to prison. So he's supposedly arrested for unrelated crimes, and meanwhile, HK is Slade. He's Slade. Now we're going to come back. Trey Five is going to appear in this story because he has stood out to be the main government intermediary, along with possibly some other figures. In fact, with some other figures, because they're also going to connect with Kingvon, with where he's also going to connect with Von, um, because the two, the two, the HK and Von are both connected with each other. Like they were, the government would have looked at them as a sequence, a sequence of events. They would have paired them together as a would have paired them together in this situation. Now, so so the reason, okay, what the government does is, in this theory, what the government will do is there's a term that they call a patsy. You know, they will use a patsy, a diversion, a a a distraction. They use this in the intelligence field. It's smokes and mirrors. They use it a lot. They use it in front of our faces. They use it in the crimes in front of our faces. JFK, the, the crime of JFK. They used it then. They've used it numerous times. In this situation, it was no different. So they used they they used HK to be the trigger person among others, but also they also after that situation happened, he was also slain. And what has only just come out recently is he would have been slain by people that he was closest to, people that he was close with, people that were what he would have deemed, his that were part of his the people that gave him the people that put he, the people that were closest to him. And remember, um the thing is, the government, their main task, which is a small part of the smoke and mirrors, is they want these individuals off the streets, usually in one way or another. HK could have been going to school. They said, no, you're not going to school. Made going to school impossible. They killed his brother. And now he's in the streets. So they closed off the different avenues that he could have wanted to go on. He couldn't just be a he couldn't just be what they wanted him to be. They created destruction and chaos around him and effectively moved the energy to move him to force him into a different direction completely that he was heading from because his brothers, his two older brothers, were keeping him out of the way because they had the position to do that. They were keeping him out of the way. So fast forward now, we're gonna just tie this up with with Von is that because also mentioning HK's Hakeem's brother, who's was also slain on the same night that Von was. And now this is the main thing that puts it all together is that these individuals were already on the list. They were all on the list. They were on this empowered list. The government were behind it because we've seen how we've seen the whole um, with one situation. The government was clearly there in disguise, some in disguise, and some, they were there. They set the scenery because if you remember, what happened was Von gets into altercation with Condorondo. They get into this altercation, which is staged to for Von to react a certain way, and once he reacts, that gives them probable cause to shoot him, to have him shot, and it was all set up by the inside. Because number one, the only person that was also sh- shot at and slain was Hakeem's brother Mark, who was the only person that was armed. Everybody else in the entourage, they made sure that there was no weapons. They had no weapons with them. Von was certainly not had no weapon. He was intoxicated. He. This is nothing to overlook because he had spent of his life, majority of his experience in and out of prison. So you've heard people even say that he hardly partook in any recreation. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink. He always kept himself fit because he had the mentality. He still had the prison mentality within him. This all changed around 20. He came out of prison 2017. This probably started to change as soon as he was involved with the industry. Then he started to partake. This was all by design. Started to partake to diminish his cognitive. Because Vaughn was as sharp as any tool in the box. This is what they had to disarm him that way. He started to partake. He's in the club. He comes out of the club. They know his temperament. they've studied him, they've put people around him to feed him, they've put people around him that he looks up to, that he trusts, to feed him and to enable him. Knowing Von, he knew what was going on. He knew, but I'm not. Um, this is where other forms of manipulation comes in. I believe is that he knew what was going on, but he didn't. He didn't. He knew what was going on. He would have known that he was being drugged purposely. He would have known that he was being steered certain directions on purposely. In fact, um, having listening to most of his music, he puts it in his music that he knows that he knows that he knows what is going on, but he just puts it in his music rather than walking away from these individuals. That's probably the only thing that could have, that would have walking away would have been another story, I believe, because the industry were at this point they had put him into so many contracts. You know, they give him a, he had everything that he needed, but he also had to be in certain places and do certain things, and he was tied up within the industry at this point. Um, so there is a lot, but you could also look into his management and you know okay, I'm not even going to go really put so much into there, but the industry, once you enter the industry, there's certain, once you go through the door of the industry, the label, the management is included, and also because the industry is like one big system, it's almost like a microcosm of the earth structure, the governmental structure that the earth is operating under. The industry is a miniature version of the government because if you in the industry, everyone in the industry will be connected. It will be all interconnected. It's almost like a cycle. It'd be the radio station, the radio interviews, the media outlets, the the everything it all falls underneath the same umbrella. They become a part of that circle. I'm gonna just leave it there. But just key points to the key point here that I'd just like to go over again is that these the youth in Chicago, or especially around that particular area, that particular area, these were empowered individuals, and they have been they have like a secret task force that is um, manipulating and watching, manipulating the interactions from the sidelines, and also also how the remaining guys, the guys that are still out on the streets, that those people are those individuals are they're on the list. They're on this list that they want them. You know, the guys that the the season the season of you know, they call it the drill era. The people that started the drill era, these people are wanted by the government. They were they were first used by the government, exploited by the government. Then after they've had their use, there will be this this there will be there will no longer be of there will no longer be have that much use for them. Maybe you have one or two individuals that will slip through the net, but as a community, this community has been targeted for exploitation, and majority of them are no longer here anymore. We're going to just leave. I believe it's fair to say to see his face. He's an individual who is possibly the face of this drill era, and he's also connected with Vaughn and those guys. But he's an individual that he's currently in prison for. Okay, okay. We just wanted to leave it there. I'm gonna just leave it there because I just wanted to add, um, not not he's just to see his face as somebody who's also has been um, is an empowered individual that was sought out by the government from possibly an early age throughout his life. He would have been sought after from he would have been like a second generation empowered individual, like the majority of these guys are. Okay, I'm gonna just leave it there. God bless and love you all.